Hello, nurse. I mean, beautiful human. Or nurse, if you're a nurse. Good morning. It is still the countdown to my 55th birthday. And I got 4 days to go. And so I am reflecting, as one does before a birthday often. This is the big 555, so it seems like a extra worthy of reflection. And also I'm coming off a pretty brutal transitional stage of my life and looking forward to entering what feels like a new era all around. I don't think I'm alone in this. There's AI is probably the biggest factor, but there's also a lot of economic stuff, a lot of political stuff, a lot of shadowy stuff that is maybe coming ripe for transformation, something like that. Yeah, so it's a beautiful, exciting, interesting time to be alive. We're approaching the Chinese New Year, which is one of my favorite times. It coincides with my birthday usually, real close, within a few days. And I believe we're entering the year of Fire Horse. I need to do a little research and look into that, but it sounds right, feels right. I hope that's right, because yeah, I feel synchronistic with that energy, and that feels good. Other ways that I feel synchronistic with energy are less good or bad, more just like what they are, which I think is the overarching lesson I keep getting in this life, is that my judgments come from like finite points of view, and the more I can open my mind to possibility and appreciate other points of view, the more it becomes apparent that good and bad are just they're dependent on a point of view, I suppose, would be an accurate way of saying it. In any case, the thing I've been reflecting about the most in the last probably 24 hours or maybe even a little more is death, which, I mean, I contemplate them always. That's one of the number one questions, right? But a friend of mine died, a good friend of many other good friends. I may have mentioned it yesterday because it was actually Monday that I learned about it. So I probably did mention it yesterday, but I've been reflecting on it more since then. Her name is Chaz. She's a good musician and singer, or was. And she went out in that shining star kind of way. I think she was 57, not much older than me at all, about my age. And yeah, what I think I was talking a little about it yesterday, and how there's this duality between being generous with yourself, your energy, and your time, admiring that and appreciating that, and then maybe also sacrificing a lot of yourself in that people. There's a distinct, wrong thing, and I think there's a whole is to it. So it's not like I figured out a right or wrong, but I'm making note to myself and sharing with others, I suppose, how I think it's important to balance being generous with ourselves and not over self-sacrificing to the point that we end up extinguishing ourselves to please other people. Now, like, maybe there's no such thing. Maybe I was just listening to another episode of the telepathy tape talks and discussing afterlife near-death experiences. That's what they're called, NDEs, and just the whole concept of a greater consciousness than what we're experiencing here most of the time, which resonates for me. A lot of the conclusions that people come to when they talk about their near-death experiences are very much the same conclusions I've come to in my near-life experiences. I've had a fair number of near-death or, those kind of experiences, like I had on Friday, where I'm not sure if things are going to be okay for a little while, and there's this slowing down of time and real, like, it burns into your memory, so you're like, there's a good chance I will be replaying that for a long time to come, and I've already replayed it a lot and end up reflecting on it a lot, because there's this rapid sudden change of, like, a rapid sudden state change is what it is. And I mean, maybe it is a near-death experience in its own way. Again, I've had others that felt nearer, but I was uncertain if I was gonna be okay for a little bit there. And while I was in that state, I was also in a lot of pain, which could have been a clue. But here's the thing. Part of what I teach about is that when we're in a dysregulated state, we get knocked for a loop, or we just reach that threshold and spill over, whichever way it happens. Once we're dysregulated, we literally do not have access to our prefrontal cortex, our higher thinking capacity. And so, interestingly, at the same time that happens, where we have less capacity to think through things, we also have an increased sensation of certainty and clarity. That's why, like, being angry can drive, we can get so out of hand. Like, why crimes of passion are a thing. In some states, you can get out of having killed someone under that defense, because it's an altered state, and it's when we're so overcome with emotionality that we shut down our thinking. I mean, it makes sense from a survival point of view that we're not usually sometimes we do just freeze and we're overcome with confusion. That does happen too. But sometimes, like in the fight or flight aspects of fight, flight, or freeze, or I like to add fuck to that, because I think that is something that overwhelms people. But in any case, you could put that in the same category with fawning, which has made its way into the F's of nervous system dysregulation. Whatever way that the nervous system responds to the current situation, once it's dysregulated, it shuts down that access to the thinking part of the brain so that action can be taken, and which makes sense. Again, you don't want to be weighing all the options when you need to, like, jump out of the way of a snake or run away from well, don't run from a bear, but it depends, doesn't it? In any case, there's a little bit of not a little bit, that can be a huge issue there between our shutting down our thinking and our usually having an impulse to act very quickly. And with that comes a sense of certainty, of clarity. Anger being like, we get a real sense of clarity when we're angry, even though if you've ever been that angry and then come out the other side of it, hopefully without hurting anyone, including yourself, but certainly a lot of hurt goes on when people are angry. And then it's very common to come out of that state either having disassociated so much that there's like no or little memory of it, or the memory quickly fades, or if the person remembers it, they're bewildered to some extent and going like, I don't know why I acted that way, or I really am shamed of how I acted. That's not how I want to act. I don't know if you've ever had like a recording of yourself when you were inebriated or angry, and then or really upset, and then looked back at that recording it can be quite jarring. A lot, I say that I don't know if you have, even though there's so much recording in this day and age, but still people manage to avoid it sometimes because it's so jarring. But if you can stand it, it's one of the greatest tools there can be, because you can see yourself through a different lens, literally, and often be shaken out of your own self illusions of yeah, denial, what's really going on, what you're really doing, how you're really creating the scenarios that you're living in. Largely, again, I will repeat, as I have many times, I'm not trying to say that everything is in your control and everything is your fault, but there are many things in our lives that are in our control. And one could say, I don't like to use the word fault so much, but are our responsibility. And with great responsibility comes great power, because then when we take our responsibility, personal responsibility, back, then we can do things about the things that we're not happy or satisfied with. I will stop there. My poor dogs are already slipping into nap time, giving up on me for a walk, but I'm going to go get that done and keep taking care of my healing body. I'm doing day 3 of my 3-day reset over in the Human Reboot Dojo today. That's in the school community. Probably you can find a link to that somewhere down there. Check it out if you're interested. And in any case, thanks for being you. Thanks for letting me be me. And I will see you soon. Ciao for now. Bye.